Okay, so recently, my sister has been having issues at school. So, issues in other words of bringing a backpack to school. So, recently, I guess in the Orange County Department of Education, there has been a no backpack policy. So, what does the no backpack policy consist of? Is basically students in elementary are not allowed to bring backpacks for safety hazards since the last traumatic high school shooting at Parkland. So I wanted to bring up the fact that I believe that the school should revoke the ban, at particularly my sister's school. And the reasoning for that is because, first off, it's a violation to the right of property. The second reason is uh, it can it creates a safety concern for young children when they shouldn't be even thinking about anything like that. And the last one is just for preparedness for school. So let me start with the first one. How is it a violation to school or violation to their rights to property, right? They're only minors, they're not necessarily wise enough to even think about amendments or anything like that. However, there is a case between elementary student named Elsie Meredith, and it's within the New York Times website. It's a case where an elementary student versus her school that does not allow any backpacks come to the point that basically she brought a backpack to school regardless. Now, what she claimed was that she believed, or in her own words, she says that she believes that she says that I feel like it's important for students to basically stand up for their rights. She feels like it's a violation to rights of property, which brings me to the point that even though minors may be young enough to not necessarily know so much of anything, they do know what's right from wrong. So she kind of brings that point up in the fact that she's against her school and she's against a judge saying that she wants to basically provide her whole classmates or her whole school with the opportunity to bring backpacks back. And another source of credit, I guess, is her father, Charles Meade. He used to be an old professor, and he believes, well, he states that he believes that the primary element of education or intelligence is questioning. That our country is always thinking about being critical, so thinking critically. And theoretically, that's what education is about. Is always questioning something, learning something, and for on, right? So, in violation of a student's right to property, it takes the courage for a young student to obviously practice their amendment. Now, schools are basically authorities and they're not necessarily letting students do that. Therefore, it creates a consequence where now students are basically in lawsuits. So that brings me to my next point, creating safety concerns, basically. So, with that being said, I do have another source of credibility that's to a fellow classmate to Elsley, which is, his name is John Cooney, or James Cooney, one of those two. And he had this false mentality of basically saying backpacks are a fire hazard, that they're the main reason why there's multiple violence in schools and stuff like that. However, I feel like he's brainwashing away. because students that are in elementary don't necessarily know everything about what goes on in the world or anything, or look at the news or anything like that, they have this false mentality of basically saying, you know, if someone that's older than me says this is wrong, then it's wrong, and they're just gonna follow that rule. However, I feel like that's putting most of our future generation of children that's gonna be obviously anything they want to be, basically it's impacting their lives in a negative way. It creates a mentality that kids are going to be thinking backpacks are a threat to school. So I did a little interview with my sister that goes to school down the street from my house, and I asked her a series of questions. The first question is, do you feel safe at school if you find someone with a backpack? Her answer was no. She specifically said that backpacks make her feel terrified. In fact, that if she sees someone at school with a backpack, she thinks there's something that's going to happen. And as an older brother, a protected brother, I find that very, heartbreaking. Like, a student, especially her age, being 8 years old, shouldn't be worried about getting shot up or getting stabbed or any negativity really in elementary. She's only in second grade going on third. So I feel like it's obviously false claiming something, and it's ruining the chances that many young generation students to have a good experience in school. So that brings me to my last point. The last point is preparedness. Now, as we all know, we all, I'm pretty sure, had the experience to take a backpack to elementary. None of us had that worried thought about gun violence or any type of violence with the backpack involved. So theoretically, schools are putting these mindsets into young children, saying that a backpack is a primary source of violence. It's a threat to schools, and you should not bring it to school. So, with that being said, it's kind of making students unprepared for school. They're having kids go to school with just a pencil and a folder. If you ask me, I feel like that's very unprepared, especially being a college student needing a backpack at all times. So I did have this article that I read. It does consist of this writer of a school, I believe it's Knight Errant School, and it consisted of Peyton James. So he's someone that's interested in learning about environment and sociology and just how people function and how they think. And he brings up a very good point about how young children are still developing their brain and they're still growing as a person, and that they need whatever material that they need in order to basically succeed. And I feel like having a backpack obviously brings you multiple opportunities to have your materials, as into writing materials, your books, any important information I guess you bring home. Here's another series of questions that I've asked my sister is, do you feel prepared at school with just a binder and a pencil? And of course she says no, and basically she'd rather have her school bring backpacks back and to help many of the students basically be prepared for going to junior high, high school, and college. And within the words of Peyton James, he does mention that students are going to school with only a binder and a pencil, are becoming unprepared for whatever it is that they do in classes. They typically start becoming late, and yeah. So I just want to conclude to the fact that I feel that the no backpack policy should be revoked in the terms of the sake of violation of not the first right, but the right to property, for the sake of young children's safety concerns and being prepared for future education.
So George, what'd you think?
I really liked how you made the connection how that first case or the case was in Orange County, and I mean that's local, that's where we live. So I think that has more impact than if it happened in Texas or New York, because people don't really care if it doesn't happen where they live. So the fact that it's in Orange County really has a bigger impact. And I really like the point you made where they only go to school with a pencil and a binder. It kind of makes it sound like they're going to school more ready to fight off a shooter than to learn. And I think that was really good, visualization. And the fact that your sister doesn't feel like you ask your sister questions, that makes it more like firsthand.
Well, I think your sister's story gets more interesting at the end than it was at the beginning. You kind of start off with that story, but you're not telling it in the most interesting way possible to set up what the topic is. And I think you're missing an opportunity to pull us in a little bit more emotionally here. We do know very quickly what the topic is that you're discussing, although it does sound, it's a relatively recent policy. It's been adopted. I don't know if it's countywide, just in that school district, or just at that school. So I could use a little bit more information on how the policy is working. And in fact, there may be some suggestion that it's also wider policies that are being practiced in other places, because you do have this case that the New York Times talks about, although the New York Times could be reporting on a local case also. I'm not sure where that was. The first point where you're talking about our right to property, I don't know that there is a right to property in the context in which you're discussing it. The fact that some student is suing to be able to do that sort of thing demonstrates that they are willing to stand up for what they think is right. I'm not sure that that necessarily makes them right, the fact that they're willing to stand up for that. And I appreciate that their father is very supportive of this, suggesting that that shows that they are, learning something. And asking questions is an important kind of thing to do, which I don't have any objection to that. But I'm not exactly sure why we believe the one kid's opinion rather than the other kid's opinion. The other kid has an opinion too, and you kind of dismiss that opinion because they're simply agreeing with the school administration, and that can't be right. I'm going, well, why can't it be right? If I'm agreeing with my teacher about math, why can't I be agreeing with them about this and also be right? I'm not saying that they are right, I'm just saying that there's kind of an inconsistency here that needs to be documented. The safety issue, I assume that there's the reason that this backpack ban has been put into place is because there's some concern about kids bringing weapons or something dangerous to school, and that the backpack would be the place where it would be secreted. I'm not exactly sure if the policy, like I said, is a long-term policy or if it's a temporary way of addressing what is perceived as an immediate threat that's going on here. In the long run, I think there may be answers to this that address this, but nobody seems to, at this point, it's just like, well, you said X, and I'm going to go against X immediately, as opposed to looking for a potential solution. The solution that they have at most of the venues nowadays, you can carry a bag into the stadium, but it's got to be a clear bag, that kind of thing. I'm thinking, okay, well, why don't we just have the same solution for the kids with their backpacks? You can have a backpack, but it has to be a clear backpack that everybody can see everything that's inside the backpack. Wouldn't that solve the problem? I don't know if that's the issue that you think is important. just being able to carry all your stuff, or whether there are issues of, I should be able to keep in my backpack what I want without everybody sticking their nose into that business. I'm not sure which the issue is that is going on here. The notion that a ban on the backpacks suddenly makes the backpacks seem evil to kids, and so they're now a little freaked out about that. Your sister's experience is, obviously something that you're referring to here. I'm not sure that that's automatically the way that we want to generalize on this. Not to be disparaging of your sister or anything like that, but I'm not sure that all kids would react the same way. And once again, since we're only talking about what appears to be a local experience here, making a broader generalization from it, I think, is a little bit problematic. You have a couple of, like I said, on the first point you had the New York Times quote about this one case that's going on and a parent that's being quoted there. Then you have the kid that you dismiss on the second point, that he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, this James or John Coney that you mentioned. And then you've got this person James that you were quoting on the third point, and I didn't know that there was a lot of substance there. There's not any statistical data here. It's early in the process. I think you have a point of view on this. I'm not sure that it's that it isn't just a knee-jerk reaction to something that is frustrating to people. It probably needs a little bit more development. All right. Thank you.